Welcome to Warblog. Today we're going to look at Operation Bourgou 4. So, let me look in 1 minute. Yes, Operation Bourgou 4. This is Burkina Faso, which we know for its failed coups and other peculiarities. But in this instance, they are part of the sort of effort to deal with jihadist groups in the Sahel area. So I think we've got some things in Mali, in Niger, and elsewhere, more towards Libya and Chad, and to the northwest of Mali, possibly more towards Algeria. But in this instance, Burkina Faso have been sort of failing in this area with these jihadists. I'm not sure exactly what sort of jihadists they are, but it doesn't really sort of mention it in the Al Jazeera whatever website it was on. So the French have just gone in there. I think it's this link here actually. France announced troops deployment to Burkina Faso. Sources suggest the operation has already started and been carried out at the request of the Burkinabe authorities. Whatever that is. Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. Yes, so she announced the deployment of troops in the three borders area. So there's three borders. There's Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso. So it's this sort of area here. It says this is. I'm really the reason I'm reading this bit is because it's sort of interesting. It is a bit early in the morning for me though, so I'm a bit subdued. But during the country's visit to the capital, as she said, the launch of the Operation Bourgou 4, so presumably there might be Bourgou 3, 2 and 1, I don't know what that means. It sounds like a cheese, doesn't it? Will be led by Wargame, France's military operation in the Sahel region of Africa, which is, I think we've covered elsewhere, but I can't remember. But with the eminent contribution of two Burkinabe companies. So it sounds as though that it's a French operation. That the Burkinabe or the Burkina Faso state don't really have the ability to contribute towards, other than two companies, which is not a lot. And I sort of reflected that by giving them a generous mechanized company and a motorized company. And so France have some artillery, I've given them some infantry. Now infantry is to go with the artillery. So that's there. I've given them mechanized, but they're a bit tougher. And looks like they've got two mechanized in there. And there is some special forces, so there's not a lot. Now, it doesn't really sort of say what's what. It's sort of talking about how they've got 4,500 troops in total across this sort of Sahel area. So I would imagine that there's nowhere near that amount, so I've given them some reduced amount. But I've also given them air power. I think that's going to be key. I imagine the French are providing a lot of air support in the sense that they're providing air support where required. So they've probably got adequate air support. Oh no, it actually says it there. Look, although it has given air support to Burkinabe troops and small numbers of French troops are known to have operated in the country for some time, this announcement represents France's first major commitment of ground troops in Burkina Faso, etc., etc. Basically, I'm just looking for the part where it sort of says that they're just, the region has seen much violence carried out by armed groups since 2015. See that troops from other countries allied under the G5 Sahel force, so there's another sort of thing that I'm fairly sure we've touched on. A military alliance set up by Sahelian countries to combat armed rebellion activities in the region will also participate in the operation. I haven't actually got those ones, so maybe I should go back and do those. Maybe give them some sort of Mali troops across here, some Niger troops here, and maybe some of the other representatives. It's sort of interesting because I did put these ones here in Mali and these ones in Niger deliberately to sort of present the problem of them being across the border. So presumably you can go across the border. It's a bit of an odd game because it's not going to be much of a sort of, much of a muchness really, in the sense that it's going to be strategic, but there is something that I'm trying to get onto here. Doesn't really say. The deteriorating situation is worrying, and the Burkinabe authorities have been forced to call on the French to limit this degradation. Burkina Faso suffering from intense violence as rebel groups. Here we go. So maybe I should have read all of this as slowly as I read it now, including Ansar ul-Islam, Jamaat Nasser al-Islam wal Muslimin, and the Islamic State. So there's two things I can go back and really sort of add. I might do that. Have been carrying out attacks in the country on an almost daily basis. So far this year, the conflict has killed nearly 1,700 people. So that's what I was trying to get to, really. That, and I sort of knew it, but here on Sunday, the Burkinabe Member of Parliament was assassinated by unidentified gunmen in the north of the country. The military answer to jihadism is a way to deal with the consequences and not the causes of the local insurgency groups. It's all sort of, it's interesting really, because it's the same sort of everywhere, and the consequences or the causes. So it's not my maybe I shouldn't really say this, but it's not my thoughts that whatever the proper word is, that the causes of this jihadism are ideological. They're more situational, in the sense that these people probably don't have much more to do. I mean, this is about the sum of it. I'm not going to play this video, but this guy is this is sort of like the equivalent of their horse-drawn cart. And probably, I don't know what this is. It looks like a motorbike. Maybe this is a purpose-built vehicle. Maybe they made it up themselves. But this doesn't look like, these people are probably doing whatever they can to survive in a rough area. And I've always said this about the hot areas, why places like the Middle East and Africa are different. The weather is a big factor, and it's just so hot, and there's not much to do, in the sense that the opportunities. I mean, if their economy is probably massively impacted by many things in the modern developing world. I mean, I know the Tuaregs they historically were nomads, and that's what they were. They would ride around on horses and things like that, and all that sort of, gone to hell, so to speak, for want of a better word, with the advent of Jeeps, with Toyota pickups. They're all driving across the desert in Toyota pickups, and their lifestyle has been massively impacted because it's now not taking them like a million years to cross the desert. They're just doing it in these cars, and they've all got phones, and they're all unemployed now, and they're all sort of, I think the breakdown in traditional economies and societies is key to sort of what's happening. Moreover, than the ideological concept of Islam and religion. It's just sort of like a call to power in the sense that they can, sort of being subservient to the man, so to speak, in the south of Burkina Faso and other places. They're just giving them reason. And so, for example, I mean, if the Islamic State or Ansar Islam or Jamaat Nasser al-Islam wal Muslimin had fantastic ideologies that were compelling to certain types of people, you might imagine that this would sweep other countries like China, where they might be looking for some, other reason to be. I've just picked China as completely at random. I mean, it could be Germany, it could be, Argentina, a civilized state where they've got a massive state structure, and where opportunity is fairly well entrenched. It's not going to happen because ideologically it's not compelling. It's situational. This is why you get a lot of people joining these states in the Middle East and Yemen, because they've not got much else to do, and it's like, I always picture it as like gang warfare in the sort of the Bronx or California. The Latinos, they don't join really because they've got sort of like multiple choices. What do I want to be? A gang member or a neurosurgeon or a rocket scientist? Decisions. No, they don't really have a local, a sort of one, that as an option to be something other than sort of working in a fast food shop. And so I think that, young men might be compelled to join, almost the romantic sense of adventure, these groups where they get to sort of, be someone and control other people's lives. I'm not saying that is exactly it. Maybe I shouldn't have sort of said all of that really, but it just sort of seems to me that, that is more of a reason than the ideological purpose of these organisations. They're just picking up on things, and they sort of see, because what you've got to realise, it's like a den of thieves. And I don't want to say the Islamic State are like a den of thieves. I'm not really trying to sort of upset anyone, but in a den of thieves, people say things, and the laws become understandable. So you might have, a bunch of people, and they all have the same contempt for, say, the police or local authorities, and the same reasoning, and they feel justified. And this is one of the interesting things about society in general. It's everyone that does anything generally feels justified about what they're doing, and that's one of the scary things. And modern media will probably quite often attempt to say that people are deranged or mentally ill or just criminally inclined. But a lot of people are not actually like that. They feel justified, and most people do things because they're justified. Most people take drugs because they feel justified, or they commit crimes because they feel justified. They don't feel as though they feel that other people have something and then they can take it, and they have because they don't have anything, they have a right to that, or because they feel, in some way they justify it in their own minds. I don't think a lot of criminals go out and think, I'm going to be really nasty today, and this is so mean and horrible, and I'm such a bad person. So when they're driving around doing whatever they do, they probably don't feel like they're bad people. They probably feel as though they're taking out a class of people that have repressed and, somehow, upset their way of life, and this, joining these groups helps to put that into sense for them. So anyway, let's just plod along. The military answer to jihadism is a way to deal with the consequences. So we've done that, haven't we? landlocked Burkina Faso is considered a strategic linchpin in the Sahel region. Analysts fear that the violence in Burkina Faso may spread beyond its borders to countries on the West African coast, such as Ghana, Togo, and Benin. I mean, it's interesting, really, because again, it's a bit like the Greek Civil War. I think the main lessons that I learned there, that any of these sort of rebel insurgencies, they need, according to the laws of civil war, multiple things to exist, and one of them is a place, and that's probably what they're looking at for in these African states. A place where they can actually sustain their their rebel organisation. I mean, in the Greek Civil War, that was done in I think across the borders with was it Yugoslavia and whatever is to the north of Greece. They were receiving medical assistance, the ability to sort of like to train and camp, and even I think they were getting money. They were being given money by these people to buy arms. They had a place to organise and to do all these things, but they could never do that in Greece because they could never hold a town, etc. But if they could take over much of the Sahel area, which basically is otherwise inhabitable generally, then that's where they're going to go. Well, that's the end of the article. I spent too long looking at that article, really. I should be looking at the game. But it is that time of the morning for me. It's unusual. But anyway, so what we got here is the Sahel region. So we've got all these jihadists we can name now, maybe. We've got maybe some support we haven't got in over here from the G5 nations or whatever they call themselves. But the point I'm trying to get to here is that you can see 3 of these jihadists on the map. But there's actually 1, 2, 3. So we can see these 3, for example. There's another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's another 6 sat in here somewhere. So the whole idea of this operation is to go through and find them. Now, the area they're operating in is probably defined by this road, and I can't even remember where they are. So, and I was going to put, and I might go back and redo some of this now that sort of having a proper think about things, but I was going to put in, say, some smaller either Burkina Faso ones or maybe some recon units, so that you can have 5 recon units to maybe sweep 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you could just sweep a straight line like that, and then you can come back and do it like that. But basically the whole idea, and this is something that I've never really achieved to satisfaction in the Vietnam campaign, the ability to sort of to fight an enemy you can't see. And I have put a lot of thought into trying to do hidden movement, but it doesn't work, in the sense that I have thought of ways of doing it. For example, I could do it so that you could do the hidden movement. For example, in the Burkina Faso turn here, I can't see them, but when I did the jihadist turn, I'd be able to see where they were. And when it comes back to the Burkina Faso turn, you can't see them, but you could remember where they are. But the thing is, because your memory is probably not that great, unless you specifically said, I remember they were just there and there, you would probably forget. And so it would be a reasonably effective way of doing it. I'm just looking at these air units, and you could use air spotting, but in short, for simplistic game, it is what it is at the moment. Now the artillery is really just here in support, so we probably want to put it on the road, because otherwise it's just going to move really slowly. So let's do that. Do we get another movement? With the artillery, yes, but not with the... Oh yeah, there we go. Okay. So everything, so we've got, other than that, we've got 4 units. Now the first thing to do, to be quite honest, I don't know how to do this. because I am sort of tempted to put them in 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, but I'd like to go in a different way. I'd like to sort of say, okay, well, I'm going to have, what am I going to have? For example, I could sweep along this road and then come in like that, you know. So what you'd need to do is to somehow have, you'd need to, I mean, technically, you would need to sort of say, okay, well, once we get to there, we say this is the region. We start making sure we've gone into this hex, so we can go like that. And you need to cross off every hex that you visited. Now, the other person can't move their units because they're hidden. But if they had true proper hidden movement, you could actually do it again and again. So when they went there, if they were there and you did a sweeping pattern across these 2 hexes, they could just move into there. You know, afterwards they could just move from, if they were there, after you've passed, they can, and it would be really difficult. And I think that's sort of quite interesting, you know, how that is. The only other thing, just to quickly add, is that the French do have these special force units which are air mobile. They're not air mobile. They're, you can put them in one. So I was going to put some transport in, but it's too complex. So what's this? Oh, that's coffee. It actually has an effect on me this time in the morning. So I'm just looking for coffee. I'm just exhausted. But anyway, so we got these special forces units. Now we can use those. So we might actually want to have a different strategy. So we might want to sort of say, well, we don't want to spend the game just doing that because it's boring. You know, I'm pretty sure the French wouldn't say that. But we might say, well, let's just go. Let's just start off with taking out these dumps. So we've got a dump. There's a base, a dump, and a base. And we know we've got this unit here. So what we could do with is actually start focusing on what we do know. So we could sort of go like that, or like that, like that. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 objectives, and we've actually got 4 units with these special forces. So we could actually try and take out these in the first instance. Interestingly enough, they're only moving at 3. Now this is the most remote item. So essentially what we've got here is probably, I was thinking when I drew this up, I was thinking this is probably not too dissimilar to what the actual French are thinking, other than the French have been probably very familiar with the area. You know, Burkina Faso forces are obviously very familiar with their area in the sense that they're not learning, but they're probably still thinking, well, how do we patrol this area? You know, how do we get rid of these people? And they've probably got other resources for finding these units. And maybe I could do something like that. You know, what I'm thinking about is drones. You know, they could have drones sort of just circling around looking for things. But for what it is, it's good enough. But let's just move these units. See, I mean, we've got to move them along the road. Let's just face it, there's not a lot of other opportunities at this stage. But let's see how far they can get. So how far is that? And they've still got 0.75 movement. We might as well just move straight into there if we can. Nope. to there. Yeah. Okay. I think that's moved up. Okay, so we've grouped them together there. So we're in an ideal position for next turn. Now, do we want to attack this unit with our air power now? Bearing in mind we don't actually have much. They've got 6 movement. They've got 6 airstrikes. Because we do know that he's there, we could give it a go. And I think I will. It's expensive. And I'm going to move these guys there. Oh no, look. There's another bit of code that doesn't work. I'll have to look at that. For anyone not aware, I've just upgraded to PHP 7 and lots of these small things don't work, but that should work. That should have worked. I'm pretty sure that I've done air mobile insertions before, so I'll have to figure out why that's not working. Let me try it again. Why aren't you working? Is it because it's next to an enemy unit? No. Okay, well, we'll have to come back to that. That spoils the game a bit. The thing is, because I'm still in the relaxed position, there's absolutely no way I want to even go and start thinking about programming at this time in the morning. I guess I'm going to force myself. I'm going to pause it. Okay, well, I have resolved the issue, I believe. Let's see what happens. Miracles. So, I don't know why that happens. It's all a part of this PHP 7 upgrade that I've pretty much got over. Oh, God, it's such a pain. These things don't improve anything. Anyway, let's commit it. I'm afraid to press the button. Oh, oh God. Okay, well I'm gonna have to go back and figure that one out. Well, let's see if this resolves it. Yes. Yeah, inserted the units. Miracles. I'm pretty sure that I've already done that though, to some extent. So I'm a bit confused as to why that happened again. But it shouldn't happen again. These are teething errors due to the upgrade from PHP 5.3 to PHP 7.3 or 0.2, and that's that. So we've now done that. Presumably it didn't take too long in your term. I had to get out of bed and everything at this end. It was quite inconvenient. So I'm feeling a little more awake. 3:30 in the afternoon. Oh, what's happening in the world? Okay. Okay. Right. So we've moved everything really, haven't we? So end turn. Well, I think they can't really attack them. They could. That might work, but they've got 1 depression, so they'll be at... I'm going to attack them. There should be a 1-to-1 in the exchange. So these jihadists have really sort of like had it. And I guess we can bring these in. We weren't expecting that. So the Burkina Faso player. So what they'd be now thinking is reviewing their strategies. Well, we've decided to sort of come along this road, or we're in this position now where we can start doing things, and we've got known enemies here. I mean, our special forces should be able to contend with these. I mean, they should have run away, but they stayed to fight, and they won a battle because they didn't lose it. Jihadists engage in French special forces day one of operation. It doesn't make for the greatest headline. What would be useful here maybe is to have some smaller targets that they can go and destroy, because that's sort of what they do. It's interesting really, because I get tied up with some of the bigger games, and this has so much potential and so much scope, and is so sort of interesting in its own right. It's quite peculiar, because we could actually do that. We could have some little villages maybe here and here that they could go and basically raise, or a little base, checkpoints that they've got to sort of protect. But what do we do with these units? The thing is, I'm sort of tempted to go this way, but that just seems to me to be a knee-jerk reaction, and I hate doing that because it demonstrates the lack of thinking. Our initial scope was to follow this road along and to come down like that. Now that would be playing strategically according to plan, but to what extent should our plan encompass unexpected situations or variants? I mean, should we be able to send something off to deal with that, maintaining our original plan, but moving off one unit with artillery support to chase known areas? We've got this engagement over here, so the last thing we want is our special forces, because they could have won. It was a 1-to-1. They could have beaten our special forces back, and that would have been a national embarrassment. So, do we want to maintain this route, or do we want to maintain it there with the option to pass something to support, because we can't get there any quicker than going along this road? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send one unit, and these units are going to follow whatever has got the closest proximity to a known unit, because otherwise the artillery is useless. So I'm going to send one unit across to this way. These units are going to come as far along this road as they can. I'm going to probably lend air support onto that. So what happened here so far is, highly significant, in the sense that when you read these sorts of things, the news stories are made up of events like we've just had there. The special forces operation. I mean, that would be like a headline thing. They're being engaged in them. So let's just move these. What's happening? I can't select him. I can't select anything. What's gone wrong? Let me pause this for a minute. I think I've got too many windows open. Yeah, I seem to have the ability to be an idiot. I just shut down another window and I don't know what it was, but it's just sort of some sort of browser issue. But oh, let me move it. Okay. Now what we want to do is, see, once we go off the road, we lose movement. Now one of these units is going to go north. And we might as well engage directly. 4 to 1 from DR. So we push them back. Now these units, let's push these this direction. So what we really want to do here is, oh, look at that, we found some more jihadists. Do you see how that worked? They were in that hex. That was exciting because that's sort of what we're trying to do. We're trying to sweep this road. That's why I've gone off the road. We haven't checked this hex here, I don't think, or this one. The thing is, I'm not keeping a record of which ones we have, so you need to print it out and to record which ones you've done. But we can attack them. And obviously we win, but not very well. And the artillery's not in range for anything. Not yet, anyway. Anyway, we really want to destroy this unit if we can. So it's expensive. So you might be thinking, well, is it expensive for the French? I mean, is all these air operations in Idlib by the Russians expensive? So what's that given? Is it 3.65? So let's put in our special forces operations. At least we should win. DE pushed him back. 6.65. So obviously we can pause here. But we say, well, what's happened? Now we've got this sort of dynamic structure. It's quite different from a lot of war games. But what have we had? And I think this is interesting to reflect on. You know, what's actually happened? So, well, we had a surprise engagement. Well, we had our initial engagement here, where we knew there were some Islamists, whatever they're called. I can't remember what they're called. Jihadists, the jihadist elements. And we decided to use the special forces to drop in to engage in them. We engaged with one battle, or they attacked, which was surprising, and obviously there were some casualties, so that was slightly not in the favour of the Burkina Faso player from a media perspective, but we can recover from that. It's nothing major. So following that, unexpectedly, the jihadists in Mali and Niger entered Burkina Faso, presumably to engage. Over here they're still uncontested, but we managed to engage these ones with our superior mobility and push them back over the Mali border. In following our strategy to go along here and sweeping along the roads to some extent, we engaged accidentally in this unit here. It was here, we engaged it to there, and we fought it, pushed it back to there. So there was this small engagement here. So already we've had 1, 2, 3 engagements. And I think that already this is like, you know, a QED or whatever that word is when you've made your point. I can't remember anything, but you know, we don't need to go much further than not, because I don't want to continue playing it. But you know, this sort of is quite an interesting representation of what's happening, and how this can sort of reflect that. And I don't want to say this is a simulation or model exactly, but you know, as a tool for thought. And I have been a bit behind on things for a number of reasons, mainly the PHP upgrade and just other stuff. But you know, so it's been a while since I put a game like this together. Because I've been stuck on all these. I managed to get this one sorted out, and I play that. This one still hasn't even got the map, and these we've got the Yom Kippur ones now off the board, and I know there's a few more in here that I just haven't finished. But you know, I did this one in Mali, but still being stuck on that. I've been sort of trying to, you know, you sort of think, oh, a game should be like this and complex and difficult to set up, but you know, this Mali one is, that's it, and obviously they just attack this base. But this one here, which is what we're playing, you know, is quite simple, but you know, offers a lot of scope for things, and I think it does it quite well, really. But obviously there are things that are missing, so we'll think, what else are they doing? We're probably putting a lot of air power in there. You know, it's sort of more insurgency type game. I mean, there's a lot of insurgency type Islamic State in Syria, and you know, all these Islamist rebel groups in northern Syria and Idlib, and you know, the Kurds and all that, and Turkish units. That sort of is not conventional warfare, still is sort of like more insurgent, irregular activity. But it's different to this type of activity where it's more seek and destroy. You know, I mean, they're not trying to find out where they are. They pretty much know where the front lines are, but here they don't. And I was sort of thinking, well, how else could we sort of, you know, do that to make it playable? Something that is intuitive. Intuitive is my number one key word, because once it moves away from intuitive, I don't want to play. I don't want people sort of not being able to play the game because they can't figure it out just by looking at the map. You know, I don't like it when you've got all these. I mean, this is enough of a pop-up. I mean, I could put more of this stuff in. Oh, I wonder why that is not there. That button's missing. Anyway, but I don't want too many of these so that you can't do things without knowing what they do. But for example, you know, you could sort of run. You could deploy drones, surveillance drones. You could sort of have intelligence operations. You know, all of these things might be nice on top, because if you didn't do it, you wouldn't notice. But I was thinking, well, how else could you sort of try and find out where these people are, other than trudging around every hex on the map? Maybe there should be other ways, and that's what I'm trying to think of. You know, dynamically going forward. I probably won't be doing anything too exciting like that, but once I get a good idea, and I think, oh, well, that would be a good idea. You know, I mean, for example, you know, things that have always been in my mind are to have some sort of ongoing score. You know, so obviously we got an exchange there, so that would be 1 point each every time. You know, but we've got a DR, so that would be 2 in favour of Burkina Faso. Here we've got another DR, so that'd be another. You know, we've got DE here, so that'd be 3. So at the moment the score would be 1 to the jihadists and 4, 5, 6, 8 to the Burkina Faso. So it'd be 1-8 or 8-1, wherever you want to say that. So, the score would be quite good. But the thing is, on the scoring system, you could have be a Burkina Faso defeat if they lose more than 4 points in total. So they've already got 25% of the way there. But to win, they've got to get over 30 points from the, so you could have rules like that, but you could have a bar across here that shows those losses. But because it's not sort of scalable directly, it would work. And but the thing is, it's an idea, and it's always been in the back of my mind, but the thing is, there's lots of other things that you sort of think, oh, that would be good. For example, last night I was actually looking at the SEAD operations, which is something to do with seeking and eliminated enemy air defense. So suppression of enemy air defense. There it is. I knew I was looking at it. I was reading through this, and I want to do something like this. Someone brought it up on one of the video things, and I sort of think, oh, that's sort of interesting. To sort of bring in more elements of what is real in a playable sense. But obviously, in a lot of what's happening, this is the thing, there's a definite school of, I don't want to say there's a school of thought, it's definitely sort of a group of it's a mentality of certain people in wargaming, that everything has to involve that level of complexity, whereas this is quite clearly a military operation led primarily by the French in Burkina Faso, an ex-colony, that is not, there's probably absolutely no scope for something like a SEAD operation, suppressing enemy air defenses. They're just not that, they just don't have that ability. They're not operating, counter electronic, methods, or utilizing surface to air missiles, or any of these sort of things that you see on that Wikipedia page. So it's just completely irrelevant. And to some extent, my point there is that this is modern warfare, and this is what this blog is about. And this is what a lot of these games just don't touch. They just don't address what modern warfare is. There is no such thing as Russia fighting America anymore. Even when I look at the videos of what's happening in Syria, the tanks that they've got, they just look like old farming implements. They look used, they look tatty, they're obviously not brand new, and they just drive around in these things, and the methods of warfare are, they're not quite what is advertised for modern warfare, like lots of professional troops with electronic communications, or working as a proper fluent team, with command and control, sort of like, in another continent, and, with air power from, offshore carriers and cruise missiles and smart bombs and special forces operations all going in. There's none of that. They're just driving around in trucks, firing 50 cows, and with a bit of mechanized support. And to a large extent, what it appears to me to be huge amounts of air support, artillery and rockets. It seems to me that is what modern warfare to some extent is, by default of what's actually happening, not what could happen. And we haven't seen it for a long time. So this is modern warfare, and to model that, I think, is to some extent key to my interest in how it all works. I'm saying all that in the back of my mind. I'm thinking, well, every day we're reading about the Iranian injection of gases into their centrifuges, meaning that they're ramping up their nuclear program. And when I read that sort of stuff, what we're not getting at the same time is America going to carry out a strike on Iran? But what I'm reading is that that's probably exactly what might happen, and it'd be interesting to see. I mean, I think, if I recall rightly, the Israelis carried out a preemptive airstrike on, I think, Iraqi nuclear facilities, like in the 80s or 70s or 80s, and I don't think they did it on the Iranians, but it might have been the Iranians. But I think what you've got to consider is, that there could be some kind of US-Iranian engagement fairly soon. And the reason I'm saying that is not because I think it will be fairly soon, but I think if they're going to do it, there's not going to be any advertising. They're just going to do it. We're going to wake up one morning and find that, that they've basically strategically targeted 25 locations to take out the Iranian nuclear facilities, and they deliberately not targeted, civil locations and things like that. And there'll be a lot of media around defending it, and the United Nations might have even been involved in secret negotiations or something along these lines. I don't know, but I mean, when it comes down to conventional warfare, I think that's about as near as we're ever going to get. And also you've got the Ukrainian situation, but the Ukrainians are slightly different because they're more advanced nations, so they've got more advanced tools, but they're still playing the same stupid game of just just skirmishing. And so instead of sort of driving along with a Toyota pickup with a 50 cal on the back, they're driving up with sort of like a £2 million armored vehicle with a sort of with a 50 cal on the top, and some sort of ordnance, and things like that, mortars and artillery and stuff. So, but the thing is, it's sort of the same thing, but they're not. There's none of this sort of modern warfare that we are given, served up as being sort of, basically the remit of the United States in the way they do war, but also the Europeans. So this is what this is. This is why I think this is sort of quite an interesting scenario. But anyway, I'm going to leave it at that because I feel I've warbled off. I'm feeling a bit more awake now anyway. Let's just reload that. Yeah, I think that's interesting enough. I might make a few changes to it though. And I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.